spent 48 hours building out this dashboard, and then I signed into Claude, and that took me 2 seconds.
Imagine if you're the salesperson and you come in and you're like, Alexander, we found a bug. Yeah, I already knew. It's already completed by my cursor agent. You called it magic. I mean, I think that's exactly what it is. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aydin, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on, Alexandra. I mean, you have been to the multiple podcasts of the previous iteration of this new way when it was super managers. But this is your first appearance on this new way. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
For those that don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Alexandra Sunderland, VP of Engineering here at Fellow. You and I have been working together for over 13 years now. So met ways back, Fluidware, building survey software. And for the last 7 years, though, I've been Fellow. Started off in 2018 as the fourth engineer on the team, I believe, and maybe the 12th person in the company. And grown quite a bit since then. And now I'm leading the engineering team and helping us build all of these cool workflows and this great product. And otherwise, I mean, I'm also an author. I wrote the book Remote Engineering Management because I've been working remotely for about 13 years, I guess maybe 12 or 13 years at this point. And yeah, love being in the tech community and contributing back as much as I can with podcasts and talks and really learning for everyone.
Very cool. I mean, it's been a pleasure. We've done so many cool things together. And I'm excited to dive in with everyone to show some of the things that you're going to show people. And I thought maybe a good way before we actually dive in is to talk about this idea of an agent. So we use agents at Fellow, and agents are kind of a buzzword. Maybe you can, in your words, like, what is an agent? Everybody's talking about, I see tweets where people say, oh, we have 1,000 agents working at our company and we're only 500 people, but we have 1,000 agents. And so what is this stuff? What are people talking about when they say agents?
So I mean, I think I have a bit more of a hot take here than a lot of people. I am a little bit more pessimistic when it comes to the marketing of technical things. And so for me, I mean, an agent really at its core is an automation of some sort of workflow. And the word agent has come out pretty recently, and I'm choosing to take its meaning really as a workflow that doesn't require too much human interaction and maybe has a little bit of LLM sparkle or sprinkled in there so that it can take decisions on its own without needing humans to be too much in the loop. But at its core, I mean, all of that really comes down to calling functions and calling more and more functions that do other things. So it is a automated workflow, really.
So it sounds like it's an automatic workflow, but obviously using LLMs and with some sort of decision making around what kind of tools can be used and so on and so forth. And you're right. Like, I think when people started talking about this initially, the way that it's marketed, it sounds like we're hiring these almost humans that can do many different things. So you'll have one agent employee and it will go out and do many, many things. But I think in practice, what ends up happening is that agents are, or at least successful deployments of agents today, and we're recording this in September 2025, so important to say that. But today, it feels like it's a lot more specialized. So you build these agentic workflows, and they're very focused on a particular task, and they do it really, really well. And you can have different agents or workflows for all the different tasks. So in other words, like doing it super broad doesn't seem to actually in practice work as well as just having like very defined narrow functions. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I'll say is that, as pessimistic as I might be about it, I do like the word because it's created this buzz around it and it's made people pay more attention to automation, be more excited about workflows, be very excited about finding ways of automating things they might be doing repetitively and finding ways of making work more efficient, life more efficient, and going out and seeking tools that can do this stuff. And because this has become such a space of agents and workflows, there's more and more out there that helps people who are not necessarily technical, don't know how to use an API, don't know how to write code, or can't vibe code, or maybe vibe coding something is a little bit too dangerous in some circumstances, but it has really created this world where it is easier for people to get started in building automations. And I'm a big fan of taking away as much manual work that is repetitive and tedious as possible, and just making sure that people have as much time as possible to focus on the things that really need creativity and brain power to get things done.
When you think about it, what do you use today? So in your day-to-day workflow, what kind of agents do you currently use? I know you're going to show us a few things, but besides the things that you show, what kind of things are you using?
One of my favorite that I use every day is Cursor. And I know there's been talk on the show about Cursor before. And if people aren't aware, Cursor is a AI powered code editor. So it lets you write code with prompts very easily. It's a terrific tool. We use it across the engineering team. But my favorite use case of it, I'm a big fan of, is that they have this concept of background agents. And so, normally when you're writing code, you need to have it on your computer, you need to be looking at it, you need to be telling it what to do. But they've created this way of spawning agents on, like, in the cloud, like not actually on your computer, that go and write code and then just tell you when it's done. And my favorite way of interacting with this is by using the Slack app. And so I Slack has this way of marking certain people and apps as VIPs now. And so people that if they send you a message, even if you're snoozed, you get notified of what they've said. So I've marked Cursor's app as a VIP because it is so important. It is so important to my day workflow because whenever there's something I see in the product or see that, like, an idea that I want to test out or something going on, I'm going from meeting to meeting all day. I don't have time to go write code here and there too often, but I do have time to send a quick message to Cursor, not as nicely written as what I'd send to an engineer whose focus I don't want to take away. And I'll just send a quick DM to Cursor and say, here's an idea, I built it out, or here's a screenshot of a bug, please fix it. And it sends me a message saying, I'm on it, don't worry. And then as soon as it's done, it sends me a message saying, here's the link to the code, here's what I tested, here's the answer. And this is great because I do that when I'm on my computer, but then if I'm on a walk or am just like away, I can message it on my phone and do that too. And so I have a very, very long history with Cursor and Slack now because I just have all these random ideas that I get to test out with no impact to the dev team. I don't get in anyone's way of doing this. And that is by far my most used agent workflow nowadays.
I love that. And then you were also actually telling me before we hit record that you are also using Claude and some connections with Claude to do some interesting things.
This has been a big unlock. MCPs in general, model context protocols. So that this way of giving LLMs like Claude and OpenAI or ChatGPT and Cursor, being able to give these LLMs the power to access data and other tools is it has like changes the way that I work with all of these things. So, for example, back in April, we had a hackathon on the engineering team, which we do twice a year. And this one was themed around AI. And you're supposed to write, projects using 99% prompts, like no handwritten code, just so we could really get in the habit of understanding what works, what doesn't work, how to use these tools. And my project at that point was building a developer sort of productivity dashboard because I wanted insights on our deployment schedule. Is this getting in the way of merging code? And I wanted to have all these questions answered that you can't answer just by looking at like GitHub stats and things like that. I was pretty proud of what I did. I'd spent, 48 hours building out this dashboard that was pretty cool, almost there, but still took a lot of work to get going to answer these simple questions. And then the other day, I signed into Claude, connected the Linear MCP because we use Linear to track all of our projects and tickets on the engineering team. And I just asked simple questions like, for tickets that come in from customers, give me a breakdown of the resolution rate in the last 30 days, broken down by priority of incoming tickets. And how long do tickets spend in triage versus in like sitting on staging, waiting to go to production? And that took me 2 seconds as opposed to like the 48 hours it took me to build out these productivity dashboards. And I thought I was being, clever by using AI to write all this code for me when really I could have just been using these MCPs with Claude. So it's crazy how much the landscape is changing every day and that my definition of like what is possible, like what that minimum bar is changing so much.
This is super interesting. So basically what you're saying is you're logging into Claude as your, AI of choice. You're connecting it to Linear and then you're asking all these like complex questions. And, some people, there's full blown software tools that do these things. You had built your own, but this kind of beats out both. And you're able to ask whatever you want in whatever flavor. And because now the AI has access to your data, then it can pull this information. This is again, I mean, to me, this is pretty mind blowing. One kind of tactical thing. I have like a bigger question, but the tactical question is, since you use Cursor so much, why do you use Claude to do this? Can you not do this same workflow inside of Cursor? Or like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I can, and that's what I was doing before, and I mean, I use the linear MCP and Cursor for a bunch of different things, like, creating tickets or, I mean, resolving tickets. It's super helpful to be able to do that, and then to gain more context there. I mean, if we just talked about MCPs, there are a million that I could give examples on for my workflows, but Claude generates PDFs and reports that I can download, and I find that very helpful. Just being able to instantly see visually what I can do there. And it's very helpful too at uncovering insights that I wouldn't have even known to ask. Because the dashboard that I was building, I still had to have an idea in my mind of what I was looking for. And I had to create a chart for every metric I wanted to track. And I had to have this idea in my mind of what was needed. But with Claude, for example, uploaded a spreadsheet of our cursor stats because we can see what models people are using, how many requests are going through, token usage, stuff like that. And I just uploaded a spreadsheet with all of that data. And I didn't ask any specific questions other than tell me insights that would probably find interesting about this and just like uncover trends that might be cool. And then it can use that data in relation to the linear data and see if your cursor usage is going up, are the tickets getting resolved faster? And it can put together those things that would take me forever to do on my own.
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode. One of the common things that we hear is, hey, you all talk about all these different tools, you walk through these demos. Sometimes it's hard for me to follow along. What we decided to do recently was take all the things that we talk about, put them in a weekly newsletter. We literally list all the tools, we link to them, and any demo that we walk through, we break it down step by step, put it in this newsletter so it's super easy for you to follow along. And the other nice thing is that if there's someone on your team that you think could benefit, they're working on that subject area, they could use a little bit of AI injection into their workflow, send them the newsletter, send them that particular episode. We make it super easy to do that. It's free to sign up. All you have to do is go to thisnewway.com, enter your email address, and you'll get this weekly email from us. Hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's go back to the episode. I guess like the question that I'm going to ask now is, I assume that you used to log into Linear a lot more. And now with with the superpower that you have, maybe you log into Linear less. How much less do you log in? And what does this say for the future of user interfaces of these products? And this applies to every product everywhere, by the way.
It's gone bad. Same with GitHub where we store our code. Like I don't log in there quite as much as I used to. And I've had to tell the team, I sometimes get them saying like, oh, we tagged you in Linear. Did you see the comment? Like, we're waiting for an answer on this. And I've had to tell them, so sorry. Like you've got to slack me if you're waiting on something because I'm not going into Linear to check what's going on there. But I will say though that like in Linear, you can kick off cursor agents from there too. You can assign tasks right to bots. So I do go in there once in a while for some workflows. But yeah, interfaces are the need for them and the ways that I interact with them is changing a lot.
So it seems like things are changing. So I think that's a appropriate kicking off point to some of the workflows that you're going to show us today. I guess maybe I'll let you explain it. So yeah, what are we going to see first?
Yeah, so I have a couple of workflows that I wanted to show you that I've built in Zapier, which is a very handy, like no code workflow building platform. And I am an engineer. I can write code. I can build all of these things by hand, but that takes quite a bit more effort. And it's a lot easier to share these things with people who are not technical when they're on platforms like this, much easier to tweak and not worry about what's going on. So I built out a bunch of workflows that I use in my day to day. And the first one that I'm going to start off with is a workflow that I've built to catch me up on my previous day and give me a bit of a daily brief.
It's super interesting. Obviously there's various workflow tools. We use Zapier, and it's amazing like the transformation that they've also gone through and like really incorporated AI into. Again, I would think of Zapier as an automation platform, and now like they've really built in this idea of LLMs into every part of the workflow. So yeah, excited to see what you have.
So the first workflow I have here is my daily workflow. This overview, a workflow looks like this. There are a bunch of steps that happen in the workflow. But what I've done here is create something that kicks off every day at 9 a.m. And so this is built into Zapier. They'll just have something that starts this workflow automatically. And then this is called a trigger. And then it goes to my series of actions. And so I have a couple of different formatting steps here, and there's a lot of built in actions available in Zapier to format things, filter things. We'll get into a couple of the examples, but I do some formatting steps, and then I do something that is very, very cool and replaces the need to really have like code running elsewhere. But I can make an API call to an external service. So Zapier integrates with like over 8,000 apps. There's a lot of possibility right off the bat there. But what I have here is I'm doing a API call to our own API, and I'm saying, give me all of the transcripts from yesterday. And this is where the formatting comes into play, just to format things nicely for our API. I've hidden my API key, of course, but I am getting all of the transcripts for calls that either was a part of yesterday or had access to because someone shared it with me, or I was in a channel where they were published to. And this is very important because I get access to a lot of meetings, but can't go to everything that I would have wanted to. Next thing that does is that filters the data that it gets into this L step AI by Zapier. And this is one of the coolest things. So we've been using Zapier for years and years. We've had an integration with them for ages, being able to get action items, add talking points to notes and things. But this LLM powered step has really, really changed what's possible with it. And this is what a lot of my workflows are powered by. And so for this one, they have built in Gemini, OpenAI models, like all the different models that you can make use of. And I'm taking the transcripts from my calls and I'm piping them into this prompt that I've written. And so for this one, I'm saying, like, you're my chief of staff, look all my meetings and tell me what are the critical updates, risks, opportunities, like things that I might want to know in my day to day. I tell it what output I wanted in. It gives me some fields, and then that gets sent over to Slack, and I tell it how to format it, and that will send me a daily message every day at 9 a.m. with the content of this workflow.
I mean, that's pretty cool because what's super interesting about this is it's not just the meetings that you went to or were part of. This is all the stuff that you have access to. And I know that you have access, for example, to all the engineering meetings that happen, even some other meetings in the company that might be relevant to you. And so you have this AI basically running and taking all of that content and then telling you the things that you would want to know. And it's super interesting because it actually kind of functions like a chief of staff too, right? A chief of staff is supposed to go to these other things on your behalf, supposed to extend your, I guess, ability to see things. And then it doesn't give you the here's all the things that happened. It's no, here are the things that you would want to know. And that's super powerful. And you can customize what that means to you. And it's amazing that you're able to do that in a workflow.
And so just to show you what that looks like over here in Slack, I've customized my Zapier message over here, triggered it nice and early so we didn't have to record this at 8 in the morning. But here is my daily brief that shows me all the insights for. I set up a fake workspace here with some smart water bottle stuff. So we're now a company that sells smart water bottles to people. But this is the form that of update that I would get with all of the important information. And this is a huge time saver so that I don't have to go back and watch all of the meetings.
This is the sort of thing, it's very interesting for anyone who's a leader. You're probably thinking, well, when I go to a meeting or when someone attends a meeting that I didn't go to, you don't want all the details. You probably have a certain set of things that you want to know. So, for example, you might want to know what were the decisions that were made and what were the alternatives that were discussed. Maybe that's what you want to know. And so, using this, you can do this across, I don't know, you could technically do it across hundreds of meetings, depending on how large your company is and what kind of stuff you have access to. But yeah, super powerful.
And that's very related to my next one too. So this one is my project meeting insights workflow. And so the one I just showed was about daily insights. And so it's, a little bit more retrospective, a little bit more here, things for you to think about, things that have come up that you should be aware of. For projects though, what I find is that I want to know about decisions being made and blockers in the way as soon as possible. Like ideally when the meeting is happening, because if somebody is blocked or the wrong decision is made, that could mean that things get off track for days and it might not be surfaced anywhere in the channel, like in Slack, or be discussed somewhere that I might see. And it can feel really bad going to a team and saying, hey guys, I know this decision was made, but I have a different opinion on what's going on. So I have this other workflow that's set up so that whenever a recap is shared to our project channel, so all of our project meetings in Fellow get sent to the one channel where everyone on the product and engineering team can access them. Whenever it's shared there, I make sure it's shared there by filtering on the channel name. So Zapier lets you add this filter here, and you can filter on any of the variables available from the trigger. I have another LLM step over here where I say you're the best VP of engineering in the whole
That's
world.
so cool.
There have been people who have like debunked this theory of like, they say like, oh, it doesn't matter if you tell someone they're the best this at the world, it's not going to make a difference. But I am the type of person that loves to say please and thank you to my LLMs, and I feel like it makes a difference. And if anything, it makes me happy. So I will spend the tokens telling them that the
But I
LLMs are
love
good.
this prompt for, people not watching it. Your goal is to make sure teams are operating efficiently, providing value, and having high impact. What a great prompt. I love it.
Would you believe that an LLM helped me write it?
That's awesome. Yeah, it turns out that LLMs know how to speak to LLMs the best. So not super surprised.
But so for this one, so it's going through the transcript of the one meeting that just happened, and it's finding, how is the progress? Like are things actually getting done? Is the project blocked by other people? Are we understaffed? Is there anything that I should pay attention to around risks not being owned, repeated blockers, scope creep, things like that? And so I can customize this to whatever is top of mind at the moment and send these summaries over to me. Again, I lean on Slack a lot, but send them directly to me in Slack so that I can catch this as it happens.
You know what I find super interesting is that it makes sense as a VP of engineering, you need to know about cross team dependencies. And if something's brought and something is slowed down, you need to be able to pay attention to that. And this isn't like just a meeting summary. You're asking questions, and it is almost reasoning and thinking what could be a cross team dependency. If you had a super smart human that was there looking for that kind of thing, this AI is basically figuring that out and then surfacing all those things, for you. And I would imagine, like from other people's perspective, they're like, Alexandra has superpowers. How does she know all these things? How did she know there was a cross? She wasn't there. What is going on? She's solving all of these problems, and she's not even there. So it's just seeing this, it makes it seem like you now have superpowers.
It feels like it, and it's very handy. 'Cause, yeah, I'm working with marketing, sales, customer success all the time, sending them information, getting info from them. It is so much back and forth, and teams depending on each other to get anything done. Because we can launch a feature, but if nobody knows about the feature and nobody's selling the feature, did we really launch it?
Hey everyone, just a quick pause on today's episode to tell you about my day job. In addition to This New Way, I'm the CEO of a company called Fellow.ai, and Fellow is an AI meeting assistant. It joins all your meetings, it summarizes them, tracks the action items and the decision, and does that better than any other tool that you've seen. We've spent a ton of time making sure that the meeting notes and summaries and action items that come out of Fellow are the most accurate, the most precise. It beats any human you have to try it. But in addition to that, what makes Fellow different is that it is the first AI note taker built from the ground up with security and privacy in mind. This means that you can use it for all your meetings, not just the customer-facing ones, but also the sensitive ones, things like one-on-ones and executive team meetings and those QBRs and everything in between. It's got really good judgment. So, for example, if you start a meeting and you're talking about some social stuff that you don't really want on the record that's going to get emailed to everyone afterwards, Fellow just knows it just doesn't include those things. Or say you have something that you talked about and later on you realize, oh man, that shouldn't have been there. Makes it really easy. You can go back to the meeting, select that part, delete it, and then it's gone from the record. It connects to all of the other tools you use in the organization, whether that's Slack or Asana or HubSpot or Salesforce or Linear or Jira or Confluence, whatever it is, Fellow integrates with all those things. I think the best part is that Fellow also acts as an AI chief of staff. Because it sits on all the meetings and the conversations that you have access to, you can ask it really cool questions such as, what are the biggest opportunities in my company? What are the bottlenecks in engineering? And Fellow just pieces together information, sees trends, and it can answer those sorts of questions. It can even do things like, hey, based on all of the one-on-ones that I've had with this particular person, can you create them a performance review? And it can do things like that too. And the sky's really the limit. What I really wanted you to do is have the opportunity to try out Fellow, check it out, and we're making a special offer available to all our listeners. So just go to fellow.ai/thisnewway to try Fellow. There's a discount code in there for you if you decide to continue with it. Either way, I would love for you to try it and let me know what you think. And with that said, let's go back to the episode. It makes me think as you're showing, I can't help but think that, I wonder if you could take all of the things that you had said or all the commentary you've had in previous conversations and almost like create an Alexandra agent that would respond the way that you would and then would consume the content of these meetings and then suggest what you might say to those people so that you could then send it to them.
Probably. I mean, I know you know this, but for everyone listening to the podcast, I've basically done that with you where, we have Ask Fellow and Fellow, and we have a lot of meetings together. And so my context in Fellow has a lot of information about how you think and decisions you make and opinions you have. And so I've asked it all sorts of questions of like, oh, we're thinking of building this feature. What do you think Aydin would say? And it's pretty spot on at capturing the way that you think about things. So one day we'll be there.
I mean, this is where things are heading. I mean, you're one step away from this. Right now, you're basically effectively getting this thing to think like you, right? Because if you were there, these are the things that you would be looking out for. So it's effectively doing that. The only part it's not doing yet is thinking about the response to those situations. And so anyway, this is super cool. We're getting there.
And I mean, related to that too, there's another one that I have here about sales calls. And so this is one that I've started working on from my perspective, but I think there's a lot of potential for it to be useful for other workflows too. So in this one, I mean, all of our sales calls are public to everyone in the workspace. And so I get access to them automatically. I can look at sales calls. I generate insights for engineering. So same kind of workflow, find me all of the engineering specific feedback, find customer quotes about what's gone wrong for customers, bugs that we should be on top of so that the sales and customer success teams don't need to manually go compile this info and send it to us and they can focus on making customers happy and doing all of those things. I mean, there are other workloads around this that I've been thinking of too, like.
And before you go there, I mean, I didn't actually know that you did that. So you have a workflow that goes and listens to these calls. And then if there are bugs, you basically have them reported even before. Like, imagine if you're the salesperson and you come in and you're like, Alexander, we found a bug. And you're like, yeah, I already knew. It's already completed by my cursor agent. this is getting this is getting really, really cool.
It's magic. That's the next step I'm adding to this because you can create cursor background agents through the API. So the next step to add here
Oh,
is,
you can actually do that to create a background agent right from here? Oh my God.
yeah,
That is insane.
yeah. So, but before if anyone even finds out about the bug, it's going to be resolved.
Okay, so that is crazy. Like, imagine your team is having customer calls, they're talking about stuff, their agents listening in, capturing those things, turning them into feature requests, and then background agents actually completing the work. So the call is done, and maybe within 5 minutes, the code is written for a human to review. We still want humans to review this stuff. But wow, I mean, this is crazy because it just makes me think what will happen, a year from now. I mean, today, but really like I feel like this stuff is still ahead of the curve. Eventually everybody will get there, but your average company is just going to be shipping so many more things so much faster, functioning with these. I mean, you called it magic. I mean, I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it is really what it feels like. It's giving superpowers to everyone, and it's enabling us to enable the rest of the company that's not on those technical teams to have superpowers too. So, we rolled out Cursor to everyone in engineering in January because it was the obvious thing to do because it helps people write code. But then pretty quickly we started enabling it for people further and further away from the code too. Like our product team has access to it so they can ask questions when they're about like how something works, or when they're defining new features they want to build, they can ask what are the gotchas that we're not realizing about this, or what else do we need to take into account if we're adding this feature. And then we started enabling it for the customer success team too. So we have some people now who have Cursor access, and they're not writing code. Maybe that's the next step, is that the support team can solve bugs themselves too. But they can use Cursor to generate help center documentation because Cursor can browse the internet. And so now I do this too whenever I want to help out and write some help docs. I'll take a URL to a page that we have publicly already, give that to Cursor and say, based on what you know about the code and the feature that we just built and what's available on the help center docs, match the style and give me the text that I can go put in those docs. We're still missing that link where it updates it automatically and figures out based on what's being shipped, do we need to go update those? But those, I feel like by the end of the year, we'll get there. Everything's just moving so quickly.
This was one of the things that, I mean, it's still a problem. I don't want to say that it's like fully solved, but it, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is just making sure that your documentation is always kept up to date. This is a problem for organizations everywhere. It's complex. And in a lot of cases, you might have your documentation in multiple languages. You might have different versions for, you might have like a Mac version and a PC version, and they might be slightly different. And just keeping all this stuff in sync is very, very difficult. But yeah, I see a world that you're describing. You will just build the software and the documentation will update itself eventually.
But I mean, that's the near term future. My more futuristic take is that documentation will become maybe obsolete because even on our side, we have pretty extensive documentation for the dev team. But now, whenever we have a question, our instinct isn't necessarily to go see if we have a page explaining that. It's just to ask Cursor because it has all the up to date context already. It can just go find the answer in the product. And so, if we're not going to do this, but if we were to, for example, expose Cursor to customers for our code, then they could ask any question they need to about how does this work? Where do I find this? And they get the answer. And I feel like there's a world in which there will be help center documentation, quote unquote, for customers where you don't need to actually do that writing. You don't need to do that pre processing and keeping things up to date. It's going to be you ask a question and the LLM or the agent or whatever it is able to interact with the current state of the product or figure out from in some way what the answer is without having that manual labor. But that's maybe next year. It feels very futuristic.
Hadn't thought about it that way. Seems like a direct interface between the code and the customer. Super interesting.
And then there's one more workflow that I wanted to share, and it's still a work in progress. So, very much a draft here. There's not a final step, but this is something I've been thinking about around triggering certain workflows when certain actions happening, like, making sure that I'm really targeting, like we were saying at the start of the episode, you don't necessarily want very general workflows applying to absolutely everything. We're creating more targeted workflows and agents that do certain things. And so this is one I'm thinking about for one-on-ones, for example. So I record all of my one-on-ones and I found that to be very helpful because one, it keeps me accountable because if I say I'm going to do something, then there's a record that I've said I'm going to do it. But something I think a lot about is employee growth. People love to grow. People love to take on new opportunities. I give a lot of feedback around, showing people what they could do differently or an area I think they could grow in, like something exciting for them. And I like to write those down in notes. But then when you have years and years worth of one-on-ones with someone, those are spread across a ton of notes. That's just really hard to keep track of how people are growing over time and figuring out with what have you told people, what's the feedback been. And so something I'm thinking about now is a way of tracking that in the background so that we can be on the same page about what's being said without having to manually write it every time. So I have a trigger here that when there's a new note that I've put in my private one-on-one channel, that will trigger this workflow. And I have a little example prompt here where it's saying, I mean, for this one specifically, like I'm giving feedback to Arthur, who does not exist, who is on the team, and I want to find I want it to extract from our meetings coaching elements, strengths, and any sort of feedback I've given them. And this takes as context this expectations and guiding principles document that I've written for the engineering team, which is in our wiki. And it is a good reference talking about how, I want people to have high impact, work quickly, collaborate well, communicate well, all of that sort of stuff. So takes that as context. And then what I would do with this is send it over to some sort of shared document, like a Google Doc, a Notion doc, like whatever it ends up being, something where it will find the document for the person and add it as a list so that it's just like aggregating this stuff over time so that we're keeping track of it together. And those are the kind of workloads that I'm really looking to build more of. It's just it helps me be better manager for people, making sure that there's less work happening on the sales and CS side, less manual effort on the engineering team, and really like all these. Even if it's something that like takes 2 seconds, if it requires brain power and it requires typing, I just don't want us to have to do it anymore.
It's super interesting to do this. Again, it really feels like each one of these things gives you superpowers. The other thing that it made me think is for those that are, I mean, if you're into this stuff, I am. I'd love to get feedback after all of my interactions, and a lot of times I find it's hard to get feedback from other people, but LLMs have no problem giving you feedback. So imagine like you could do the same thing for your one-on-one meetings or for whatever else, and you just say, hey, based on all my interactions, and you being this management consultant and having read these, 5 books that I like to reference, based on what those books suggest, what should I improve? What can I do better? And so you could just have like this live coach sending you stuff all the time. And yeah, that's the world we live in. Everything is accessible.
And you can do it for sales coaching too. So, for example, something I work to help people set up is, we have all our sales calls going through here. And if there's specific things that we want to make sure people mention or objections we want to make sure to handle or like words that we're trying to teach people to use more, you can set up a workflow so that if that doesn't happen, it notifies their manager or just, makes some noise about that. That it's like the fact that you can write whatever prompt you want in here and send information to any app means that the possibilities are endless.
This is again, I mean, there's so many cool ideas. What I would say is I think the opportunity for people is, today we showed this with Zapier and with Fellow together. But I think the conclusion here is that conversations are powerful. Conversations happen like this. They can happen in person, they can happen on Slack or Teams or wherever else. But a lot of the things that happen within companies, are basically talked about in these conversations. And so, for the first time ever, we now have the tools to operationalize all of those conversations. And so, I think everybody needs to start doing this. Start with like the most basic workflow. What are the things that you want to know from the conversations that happened over the last day? You could start as simple as that. And then once you get into it, you'll get other ideas of other things to build. And of course, if you haven't signed up to our newsletter, thisnewway.com, sign up because the workflows Alexander showed, we're going to send those in the newsletter and you can follow along and be able to start building some of these things for yourself as well. And so, Alexander, the final question we always like to end on is, so what are you most excited about over the next 12 months?
I'm excited for all of these tools and all of these platforms to continue to amaze me. I think that the pace of development from things like Cursor and Claude and MCPs, like it has surpassed my expectations by far. Like this time last year, we were not using LLMs to help us write code. Even in January, things were fine. It was a bit of a slow start, but the pace of development, the pace at which, every day I say, I wish this was possible, but there's no way, that's too futuristic. And the next week it's available. So I'm excited to see all of the things that I haven't even dreamed are possible yet and finding ways to hook them up into our workflow and tying all of these tools together. Because I think that having access to this information, having access to conversational data and data from all of these tools in an easily accessible way is terrific, and individually they're all great, but the way that they're all starting to connect together and the way that you're able to extract patterns between different tools and different data sets is really, really starting to take off. And I'm excited to see how much further we can get with that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much. I had a lot of fun.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.